Commissioner, can you talk to me through the British side of things? How did this unfold?
Thank you very much, Kieran. It's good to be with you this afternoon. Well, this goes back a few weeks when it became clear that current supplies in Australia would not be sufficient to ramp up the vaccination programme. So your system, DFAT, went to friends around the world where they knew that there were sufficient supplies or potentially surplus supplies to ask the question if we could help. So in our case, this was something we really wanted to do. We needed to look at our own forecasting and our own vaccine rollout to see how we could do this. And we identified sufficient surplus in our current stocks, which we would not need immediately, but that we could share now with Australia, where your need was greater than ours. And the concept behind the swap deal is that in weeks to come, when your own supplies come right back up, you will return the number of vaccines that we have shared with you now, and that will give us the stock that we need for our ongoing programme, including booster shots in due course. It's a classic example of where two mates share a problem and one can help the other out.
Yeah, well, it's very much welcome. I guess here as well, we've had this situation which the UK hasn't had. And the thing that sticks out in my mind through the pandemic of what a contrast it has been is the standing ovation afforded to the scientist at Wimbledon when she was there watching Wimbledon, who came up with the breakthrough of the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine. It's been so pivotal to the British rollout here through various, missteps, but also bad timing at different phases of the pandemic. The AstraZeneca vaccine has not been as well received as the Pfizer vaccine. It is a contrast with the experience in the UK, isn't it?
Well, I think the circumstances here were different because Australia had done so well to keep the virus at bay. So the risk appetite was different in Australia, and I think we need to understand that. For us in the UK, the discovery of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, including our forward orders on the hedges that we were taking on other potential vaccines, stood us in very good stead. You know, it is the British vaccine. It is the one that I myself had. And it's been literally a lifesaver for us in the UK. Many people have had the AstraZeneca vaccine here in Australia as well. And I think at the start, when those initial cases of blood clots manifested, people naturally worried, and that reduced the level of appetite, or the risk calculation became different. But as we have always said, you have a choice here of a vaccine that has high efficacy, the equivalent and very close to the other vaccines that are available. And we know how to deal with clots, understanding that and mitigating against it. But people have to decide what they're prepared to do for themselves. So I think perhaps that confusion at the beginning, and because of the different level of risk appetite, accounts for some of it. But the AstraZeneca vaccine has been rolled out globally. It's gone into many countries all around the world, and it is genuinely making a difference.
It certainly is. There's no doubt about that. And I know from the Australian donations of AstraZeneca vaccine to the Pacific, it is making a big difference there as well. And once again, we thank our British friends for that Pfizer contribution, because it should expedite the rollout here. But I wanted to ask you, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't ask you about this other area, a big focus of foreign policy for the British government. And it really is a landmark event for Boris Johnson's government and the United Kingdom, the COP talks in Glasgow. They're only a couple of months away. Are you expecting to see more ambition from the Australian government, as you've argued for?
Yes, we're very much hoping that we will see that new level of ambition. And I know it is something that your Prime Minister is looking at, working hard to try to find a position in time for Glasgow. We have asked all countries around the world to raise their level of ambition not just about confirming net zero by 2050, but also the interim targets that we need to achieve to be certain and to be able to measure that we will be on track to achieving that ambition for 2050. The recent IPCC report made it very clear that on current emissions levels, we are at risk of not remaining within sight of that 1.5 degrees of global warming. So action really does need to be taken in the next 10 to 15 years to have a higher level of ambition. We ourselves in the UK have set 68% reduction on 1990 levels by 2030 and 78 by 2035. And the Deputy Secretary General at the United Nations, just in the last day, has said that globally, we should all be trying to achieve at least 40% by 2030, 2035. So that gives you a very clear indication of the level of ambition that we collectively need to have globally.
I know that you've been holding conversations, consultation with state governments in Australia as well as the business community in recent days, from the energy sector to aviation. Are you surprised at the divergence between the view in the private sector and at the state level to what we've seen federally in this country?
No, I'm not surprised, because the reality is very clear for all of us. The politics at federal level are different to those at state level. And meanwhile, business and industry is getting on with it. Most of the major companies in Australia have already declared net zero by 2050, are looking at their company policies, their business plans, their investments to make that transition, whether it is big construction companies like Lend-Lease or it is energy companies like Australia Energy. So everyone knows what the journey ahead requires. It's about the pace of that journey. It's about being clear on the milestones in that journey in order to get to the destination that this world needs right now.
British High Commissioner Vicky Treadell, thanks again, and thank you as always for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed.